podcast. We are going to be joining you here every week, every Tuesday from here on out for the Sacramento Kings playoff push from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. My name is Brenden Nunes. Got two of my good friends here with me as well, working over here, obviously. Chris Watkins joining the show. How's it going?
Good, man. Yeah, excited to be back live and get this we can't call it a playoff push yet. Maybe there'll be a point in this show where we can change the name to playoff push, but for right now we'll call it we'll say we're excited for the postseason push because right now it's looking like play-in is the destination, but with how tight that 6 to 10 is, man, like this very well could end up in the Kings ending up in an actual playoff spot.
Absolutely. Might be premature to call it a playoff push like you're saying, but certainly in the thick of it. Other guy we got here, of course, Frankie Cartoscelli joining us from home as well. What's going on, Frank? How you doing?
Fellas, great to be on. Great to be talking Kings. Yes, wish I could be there in the studio with you guys, but got some poopy diapers. And
sounds like we don't got it's gonna take a sec to figure out what's going on with Frank here, but got Chris and I here to fill plenty. We got a bunch to cover in today's show. Obviously, the Kings are riding a 4-game winning streak here as well. I'm being told that Frankie is here on the other side now. Frank, do we got you there?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
You hear me now?
I can hear you.
Chris can hear me.
I can hear you, but apparently Brenden can't. So it's all good. We'll figure it out.
Well, Chris, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. I understand Frankie's on daddy duties today, so that's why he can't join us in person, man. But
yes.
Just like I said, man, getting ready, and this month of March it's going to be a tough one with 17 games in 31 days. It's really in the thick of this playoff push or postseason push.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be living.
Yeah, definitely a tough stretch coming here for the Kings, but they've been doing a good job taking advantage of the schedule they've had in front of them, riding a 4-game winning streak right now. You got the Charlotte Hornets you took care of at home, and then of these 4 games on this road trip that I know us three fellas were not the most optimistic talking about on Alan's show earlier in the week, but the Kings take care of business in Utah against the Jazz, and then about 70 to 90 seconds into that game against the Houston Rockets, Domantas Sabonis goes down with a non-contact injury. It looks concerning. I mean, just anything of that nature. I think you have some worries there. Ends up being a left hamstring strain. We're going to get an update in about a week here, which I think is as good as news as possible there. But Jonas Valanciunas steps into that starting lineup, and you see, I think a big reason on why they brought him in here is obviously you want to fill in that backup spot, but also have a fail-safe in case something does happen to one of your main guys that you're not falling off a cliff. And I think that JV has stepped into that role extremely well. They get that win in Houston and then take care of business in Dallas last night as well. So riding a 4-game winning streak here now, working in Zach LaVine, Jake LaRavia, a little bit of Markelle Fultz as Doug Christie gets accustomed to this new group and the players do the same. But we'll start with you, Frank. I mean, what have you just thought of what Valanciunas has brought to this team and the additions that they've made post-deadline and how they're making an impact?
I mean, are you picking me up now, Brenden, for the record? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Brenden, okay, cool. Great. So, no, the Valanciunas move definitely has been paying dividends as far as, when Domantas Sabonis went down, a guy who's a physical big, can rebound the basketball at a high level. Replicating that type of play is close to impossible. You can't really expect somebody to come in and be a high assist guy, be someone who's going to be able to replicate the playmaking to that level. But Valanciunas is someone who's a fellow Lithuanian, a bruiser in the paint, someone who's been a menace against the Kings in recent years, especially in New Orleans. It's been nice to see him fill in, especially at a time where the Kings have had little to no depth at the backup center position. And, not a knock on Alex Len or Isaac Jones, the guy who's trying to make his living in the NBA right now, but on a 2-way deal. But that kind of deal really is looming large for the Kings right now in a positive way. Because now you look at a 4 or 5 game stretch, hopefully hamstrings are tricky. That could be a week or two. But JV's a guy that can definitely fill in and has been starting, he was starting back, I think, in Toronto with DeMar DeRozan over a decade ago. So he definitely has been around the block and someone who definitely can fill in a big way for the Kings down the stretch here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like you said, Frank, you can really tell that that JV trade is absolutely massive right now. I mean, I don't know how many times they would be able to survive, even with De'Aaron Fox still on the roster, without Domantas Sabonis, just because of how important he was in the past. And now you see just how big adding Jonas Valanciunas is, you get a guy who, if Sabonis does go down, if he gets into foul trouble, he's somebody who can step in and reliably give you 25 to 30 minutes on a given night and be really, really productive in those minutes.
Yeah. And we've seen him do that so far. And if he wasn't there, you're seeing these backup center minutes now with obviously JV slotting into that starting lineup. You're seeing Trey Lyles a little bit fill back in that familiar small ball 5 role that we've seen him play throughout his career. You're getting, Scalabissier joining the team on a 10-day contract. I wouldn't say exactly part of the rotation, but you're trying to see, bolster your depth a little bit there, as Isaac Jones is very close to, from my understanding, if not pretty much already at the mark for the most games he can play on that 2-way contract. I was a little surprised that they didn't end up converting him. Still a decision they could decide to make a little bit down the line here. But JV obviously showing what he can do. I think that Zach LaVine has been really stellar for this team since he started to get a little bit of a rhythm. I think the big topic initially was he's trying too hard to make everybody else feel comfortable, not step on anyone's toes. And interim head coach Doug Christie was very much, straightforward, and we need him to be himself. That's how he's the best version out here. And I think that we've seen him start to be a little bit more aggressive and have these scoring bunches where, just pouring in a couple threes in a few possessions here, and you can really start to feel his offensive impact. How have you noticed, Chris, adjusting to pretty much being a Zach LaVine team, obviously after having De'Aaron Fox run the show for a while at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an adjustment. You saw the first couple games. It took some time. Zach definitely was being patient and kind of, letting the team or letting the game kind of come to him first. And but now you've seen, some huge scoring explosions out of Zach. He just looks more comfortable too. It's obviously pretty big to uproot your life in the middle of a season and have to do what he did this year. He was really, really cooking out there in Chicago, and you have to imagine the amount of comfort that he felt knowing that the ball was going to be in his hands all the time. And then to come over here to a situation where I think everybody is kind of trying to figure out what their new role is in a post De'Aaron Fox world. I think Zach definitely kind of took the time to fit out instead of fit in. And I definitely feel like now it feels like he started to integrate himself into the rotation and or integrate himself with the players in the rotation. And I think really you're just seeing a different level of comfort that we first saw in the first couple games that he played here.
Yeah, and just kind of piggyback on
what
that.
Have you thought so far of what Zach LaVine has brought to this team? And, they're getting a lot of threes up, a really efficient offensive group so far. Just kind of what have you seen from early returns there?
Yeah, just kind of to piggyback off what Chris said. When the De'Aaron Fox trade happened and things went down the way they did, it was kind of, you were wondering, can he replicate that and be that kind of go-to offensive threat and be someone that's going to demand the opposing defenses? And they do it in a different way. De'Aaron Fox is somebody who was more of a penetrator and got into the paint and drew fouls, got to the line. The Kings still have a player like that in DeMar DeRozan, someone who can draw fouls and have a high level of free throws per game. But Zach LaVine, someone who can shoot the lights out. He was 45% coming into the trade. Now I think he's shooting 63% during his player of the week honors week. So really kind of getting back to what he was before in Chicago. And, that's huge for a Kings offense that really has had a lot of inaccuracies and, lack of stability in shooting the basketball this year. They really have been a team that's live and die by the three. And if Zach LaVine is going to be the kind of high volume shooter and do it at a high level, that's going to make the Kings that much better of a team. And, we're kind of seeing it right now. And, I do think that if he's at his best and you do have your guys like Domantas Sabonis back from injury, DeMar DeRozan continuing to be the kind of player he's been, Keegan Murray, who I'm sure we're going to talk about in a little bit, who's been playing his best basketball of the season. If all those things can keep happening and Zach LaVine can just kind of be this kind of 24, 25 point per game player on 40% from three, the Kings are in a good spot, I think, come April. And that includes, a daunting schedule ahead of them. But, I don't think many of us expected, and I see our old buddy Joe DeRozan in the chat asking if any of us expected the player of the week honor. I really didn't. And usually, us and trying to get our content going for the website or for everything else 1140, we're keeping our eye out for that kind of stuff. It kind of slipped my mind that Zach LaVine was that kind of player. And you hear Warriors fans kind of clamoring for Steph should have gotten it. Steph did have some crazy games last week, but the 3-0 is what matters most usually in that award. And the Kings are playing winning basketball right now.
In 11 games with the Sacramento Kings, Zach LaVine playing about 35 and a half minutes, 22.5 points, 4 assists, just under 4 rebounds, 50.3% from the field, and 40% from three on 7.3 3-point attempts a game. They have a 119.9 offensive rating when he's on the floor. That's second on the team currently. A decent defensive rating with 112.1, a plus 7.8 net rating. That's third only behind Jonas Valanciunas, like we just talked about, and Markelle Fultz in the limited minutes that he's played for this group so far. In the 9 games where the Kings have had all three of Levine, Valanciunas, and LaRavia available to them, they're 6-2. Some of that spans a little bit pre-trade deadline. With a 8th in offensive rating, they are 9th in defensive rating and 7th in net rating. Now, schedule plays a part here. They played the Pelicans 3 times, won 2 of them. They beat the Hornets. They beat the Jazz. 4-1 of that 6-2. They went 4-1 against teams with less than 20 wins. You know, how do you factor in amount of, yeah, they're doing this against these opponents? And, you know, Chris, you had a joking tweet after one of the games. I'm not going to overreact to beating the Hornets and the Jazz. Now that you have, you know, a pretty beat up Dallas team that probably falls more into the Hornets and Jazz, but that really good win against the Rockets. Do you feel like you learned anything about this team, or did that increase your faith in this group this season?
I mean, it's definitely not nothing, right? Like, you can't just dismiss, you know, wins as they happen and just say, oh yeah, well, they're supposed to win those games, because frankly, we've seen too many times games in which the Kings and other teams are supposed to win games and just don't. So it's a little bit too much of a cop out to just say, you know, those were really bad teams. But you know, yeah, do they all weigh the same? Definitely not. It's definitely business, taking care of business. But at the same time, like, I wasn't, you know, even though they were massive wins in terms of the score against Dallas and against the Hornets, you know, it wasn't really like I felt they were doing anything that I didn't think they were capable of doing. And of course, the real test for this team, I don't think, is the regular season. We've talked about it, especially since the trade. This team is going to be good throughout the regular season. How good is still kind of TBD. I think we're all just waiting to see how good this team is going to be against playoff competition. And I think that's what's so exciting about this month of March. That's going to be such a tough test for this team, is we actually get to see them play against the top competition in this league, go head to head, and see where they end up. Are they going to be able to surprise us and maybe get, you know, they already have some impressive wins earlier this year against teams like the Celtics. They play Boston again. Can they, you know, they swept Houston, they swept Dallas. Can they sweep a team like the Celtics? You know, I think that's going to be the thing that we look forward to the rest of this month, is getting some actual quality wins. Of course, like I said, it's good to get these wins against inferior opponents, but you know, where we're really going to figure out how good this team is really the remainder of this month.
Yeah, Frankie, what do you take away from having a game like Houston, and also, you know, taking care of business against these teams you're supposed to, and what more can we learn from these teams? I mean, even in the Denver game coming up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my friends that are Kings fans are already texting me saying they are hoping for a first round matchup with Houston. And I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I mean, I think that the Kings, for whatever reason, have matched up very well against them. And, you know, don't get me wrong, it definitely, it tickles me to see Dylan Brooks kind of end up on the losing side of those kind of run-ins. It feels like he gets on the losing end of those run-ins a lot, for the record, by the way. It just seems like he's not someone that really is good at backing up those kind of situations. But no, I think it's huge to kind of see them, you know, back up. You know, I think we make jokes all the time, Brenden, that a certain percentage of the Kings wins are against Utah, and the Utah games are over now. Like we talked about, I mean, Denver tomorrow night. And again, they do have a lengthy injury report, and that includes Nikola Jokic, who's questionable. Sounds like he was hobbling around on a bad ankle the other night. So we'll see if he can play. I think he had the best stat line ever and hit like a 90-footer the last time the Kings were in Denver. So we'll see if he plays tomorrow night. But if the Kings make it into a top 6 spot, looking at the remaining schedule, and right now the Kings have the second hardest remaining schedule in the NBA. The only team that has a harder road to April is Phoenix, who is spiraling right now. But if the Kings finish in this top 6 spot, or even top 7 or 8, if they just make the playoffs in any of those seeds, you can't really argue that they earned it. I mean, they definitely will have earned it with this upcoming schedule. And like you mentioned, there's a Boston OKC back-to-back. I'm sure we'll dive into that, what's left ahead of them coming up here. But, you know, they've won the games they should win. And that's something they've struggled with in the past. They really have had a hard time putting away teams that they quote-unquote should beat. And I was sitting here kind of right before we started recording even, and, you know, this is a different Detroit team now. But kind of looking back at some of those games that the Kings, that 6-game losing streak, where they, you know, lost 6 in a row, if they could have won 2 or 3 of them, and there were a couple 1 or 2 possession losses in there, they could have taken business and been in a different spot here. They're doing it now, and they're doing it when it matters most. And most importantly, they're doing it with a roster that's still kind of getting acclimated with one another. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks here. But like I said, if they make it in a top 8 seed and they're playing basketball mid-April, they definitely will have earned it.
Absolutely, and they're showing us something so far. Again, take the caliber of opponent into effect how much you want, but 6-2, you're supposed to win the games that you have in front of you. And I think that was something that the team struggled with last year, and as you pointed out, Frank, something they struggled with even throughout the course of this year a little bit. But 8th in offensive rating, as I mentioned, with all 3 of these new trade deadline acquisitions available. That's over 9 games here where you're seeing them 8th in offensive rating, 9th in defensive rating, and 7th in net rating up to that point. So after the break here, we want to dive into how sustainable we think some of those numbers are. Obviously, a very talented offensive team, but can the defense keep up as they sit here in a crowded Western Conference that could move along, that could, their standing could change a lot today just based on what happens in the games that they're not even a part of. But one game here, half a game behind the 6th seed, that could change by the end of the night. And you have a tie all the way from 7th to 9th with the Sacramento Kings obviously sitting there at 8th. Dallas, who they just took care of business of, 1 game behind them in the 10th seed. So an extremely crowded Western Conference here as the Sacramento Kings try to keep up some of their top 10 offense and defense. Going to dive into how sustainable we think that is here on the other side as you're listening to the first live edition of the Return of the Roar podcast here on Sacktown Sports.
1 ticket, 2 huge shows.
The Sacramento Boat Show plus the Big RV Show. Multiple dealers discounting all the best brands. Hundreds of wakeboard boats, fishing boats, and pontoon boats. Acres and acres of travel trailers, fifth wheel, toy hauler, and motorhome. Plus ATVs too. 2 shows, 1 massive event. The Sacramento Boat Show plus the Big RV Show.
March 6th through 9th at Sacramento's Cal Expo.
Find discounts at
2hugeshows.com.
When an overwhelmed injury victim calls Ashton or Price, we immediately remove their legal burden and introduce them to the very best medical care in the region. They focus on their health and we handle all the rest. When they reach the end of their medical journey and are reunited with happiness and hope, we unleash our decades of legal experience to obtain maximum compensation. We are real, local, experienced litigators and snappy dressers too. Consultation's free and there's never a fee until we win.
Remember, for the best advice, don't think twice. Call Ashton and Price.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
This is the story of the one. He's responsible for keeping a leading healthcare facility clean and safe. And he trusts Grainger's high-quality HVAC cleaning and safety products, combined with their world-class supply chain, to consistently deliver, ensuring he's covered inside and out, so he can focus on keeping his facility clean to help protect the health of everyone inside. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Golf to Go is brought to you by the Hagen Oaks Golf Super Shop. Here's Frank LaRosa.
In the Shag Bag, the renovation of Poppy Ridge Golf Course in Livermore, California continues on schedule for a reopening this year. Architect Jay Blasey's design assures a golf course we can look forward to playing a few months down the road. Check poppyridgegolf.ncga.org for updates. And Rod Metzler, PGA with Coursco, reports that the Campus Commons Golf Course continues to grow in after a complete redesign and is also scheduled to reopen in the next couple of months. I'm hearing a lot of talk about the nighttime crowd at the Hagen Oaks driving range with their Top Tracer technology. You'll find accomplished players alongside newbies searching for that first center of the club face experience that brings them back for more. The order of the evening is fun, so it might be worth a look. National Golf Foundation reports 45 million Americans over the age of 6 played golf both on course and off course in 2023. When can we count you on that list? That's your Golf to Go. I'm Frank LaRosa. Thousands of years ago, ancient civilizations used leather for water skins, armor, and sandals. Hi, this is Frank LaRosa with a word about Naturewood Home Furnishings. Today, leather is one of nature's most luxurious products. The combination of leather with beautifully designed furniture creates an end product that adds luxury and sophistication to any room. During Naturewood Home Furnishings leather sale, you'll find their considerable selection of leather is flexible, breathable, natural, and maybe most important, comfortable. Whether you're a relaxed contemporary kind of person or you're more classic leather, Naturewood Home Furnishings has color choices and styles to fit your home. In fact, I doubt any store can beat Naturewood's selection. During Naturewood's leather sale, all leather furniture is on sale for a limited time. Sit, enjoy the comfort of leather at Naturewood Home Furnishings, off Highway 50 at Hazel. Look for the water wheel.
Big savings are back at Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. New Hondas are piling up, and that means big savings for you.
Looking to own or lease? During the spring sales event, drive a brand new Accord or Civic. Visit us today at FolsomLakeHonda.com, your one-stop Honda shop.
As a family-owned and operated dealership since 2009, customer service is our #1 priority. Our customers love doing business with us, and you will too.
Folsom Lake Honda, yeah, your one-stop Honda shop.
Whitey here, reminding you that not all grills are created equal and every detail matters. Check out the new Napoleon Prestige and Rogue models and see the difference a Napoleon makes. Napoleon grills have features other grills can't match. They're built different, built better, built to last. Complete with a lifetime warranty and premium stainless steel, boasting absolute quality. Napoleon knows that the smallest details add up to make a big difference when curating your perfect grilling experience. Visit Green Acres Nursery today for your best selection of Napoleon grills and accessories.
Got a drain that's clogged up? Or maybe a toilet? Or a faucet that just won't quit leaking? Kenny and Jerry are here from Bell Brothers, and we want you to know that it does make a difference which plumber you call.
At Bell Brothers, we respect your time by showing up when we say we'll be there. Our technicians are all background checked and drug tested, and will greet you with a smile.
They're trained to do the job right the first time, and they carry over 1,000 parts on their trucks, so they won't have to order something and then come back later.
They leave the work area cleaner than they found it, and your final bill will be the same as they quoted. That's why they call us the No Surprise Guys.
So if you need a plumber, it does make a difference who you call. Call Bell Brothers. Our number is 916-444-1234, or find us online at thenosurpriseguys.com. That's 916-444-1234, or find us online at thenosurpriseguys.com.
The No Surprise Guys, Bell Brothers.
I want it all. Money, fast cars,
your flagship station for the Beam Team, Sacktown Sports.
Very first live edition of the Return of the Roar podcast. In case you missed the beginning, Chris, myself, and Frankie are going to be doing this 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Tuesday here as we take you through the Kings, dare I say, playoff push, postseason push, depending on what you want to consider the play-in, where they definitely seem to be a part of. Currently sitting at 8th in the Western Conference are the Sacramento Kings, 32-28. They are half a game behind the 6th seed Golden State Warriors, and also tied with 7th and 8th, sandwiched in between the LA Clippers and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Dallas Mavericks sitting there in 10th, a game behind the Sacramento Kings. And then in a distance 11th seed, you got the Phoenix Suns, Portland Trailblazers sitting right there. And there's a decent gap between above the Golden State Warriors. They're up to 5th place as well. It really feels like this grouping of 5 teams are pretty likely what's going to finish 6th to 10th here in the crowded Western Conference. And as you guys will remember, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th all take place in the new play-in tournament. I guess not new, been here a couple years now. 6th seed would obviously barely scrape out of that, leaving a lot of value in eventually hitting that spot. But the 9 games that the Sacramento Kings have played with Zach LaVine, Jonas Valanciunas, and Jake LaRavia, they're 6-2 throughout their last 7 here, or the last 8, 8th in offensive rating, 9th in defensive rating, 7th in net. I think offensively is obviously where this team can really make their money and have a lot of different offensive talent. We're starting to see it all actually mesh a little bit, though. And I think there's still an aspect of taking turns, but maybe figuring out the right moments to do that. And I want to start with throwing it to you, Frank. Obviously, again, a team that relies on their offense a lot. But to you, what have been the keys to them being efficient in that aspect? And how have you seen, what's been your perspective on the shot distribution?
I mean, it's all about three-point shooting to me. I mean, and one of the main reasons why the Kings got off the slow start they did was because their three-point shooting was so sporadic. And just kind of looking at this 4-game winning streak, and this is NBA ranks for the Kings since February 24th, a limited sample size, sure, but they're second in the NBA in three-point field goal percentage, 44%. That only trails the mighty Cleveland Cavaliers, who are just seem like also a team the Kings have not faced, by the way. We'll see them twice, once in Sacramento, once in Cleveland. So the three-point shooting definitely has been a huge plus for them, and one of the main reasons why the Kings have been playing some winning basketball as of late. And the shot distribution, really, I thought it'd be more of a problem just because of the fact that you're seeing more shooters enter the fray. And like you mentioned, Jake LaRavia, someone who was a 40+% shooter in Memphis, he's now found his shot and looked really confident. At the end of that Dallas game, it was a blowout, but he was letting it fly with confidence, and just seeing him be able to do that more often will be huge for this offense, especially in the second unit where the Kings have been struggling to find production. They were 28th, 29th in bench scoring for most of the year. Getting Keon Ellis to continue showing that he's not just a defensive guy. He can knock down the three. I think he's leading the Kings right now in three-point field goal percentage, probably around 43, 44%. And again, Keegan Murray, who since January 1st now, a large sample size, shooting 40% from three. So this is somebody who we're looking at and talking about, I think, on this very show in November, just kind of wondering what in the world was going on with Keegan Murray, someone who has had a huge weight put on his shoulder, someone who's defending the best player on the opposing team every night, someone who we're looking at as a cornerstone for this team going forward. Well, he's only 24, about to be 25, which is a little older for a third-year player, but I think we have to remind ourselves sometimes that this is a third-year guy. I mean, this is someone who literally, in other situations, someone who's still kind of coming into his own and developing. And, I know Brendan's guy, Jaden Ivey, this year before he got hurt was taking some serious strides, and that kind of puts Keegan Murray more under a microscope. But seeing him be the player we kind of want him to be right now, which is really a 3-and-D kind of guy, has been huge for the Kings. And he's also trying to find his own shot on offense. So seeing Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, DeMar DeRozan, even though Malik's being more of a distributor as of late, he's now the starting point guard, which hasn't been his position for the past, 6-7 years, but is now obviously with De'Aaron Fox out of the fold. But seeing those guys get their shots and, do it at a high level gives me confidence that this team maybe has the right pieces to make a, like you said, push down the stretch.
They definitely could. I mean, I think that's the Keegan Murray point, I think, is one that can't be made enough. I mean, I think he really exemplifies the Kings not falling into bad shot distribution. I think the fact that Keegan has been so aggressive here, and I will gladly wear that I've been a huge just critic of Keegan's game throughout his couple years here, wanting him to be more aggressive, wanting him to kind of I've called for him to kind of have more of an ego and look for his shot a little bit more. I think he's kind of now been forced into a situation where if he doesn't do that, he's just seen that he's not going to get a lot of shots. And I think Keegan actively looking for his three-point shot has definitely led to the shots being a little bit more even, because if Keegan's not taking those shots, well, who knows on how many of those possessions, it ends up being 8 seconds or less isolation possession for DeMar or for Malik or for Zach, leading them to get 20 plus attempts. And we just haven't really seen that. I think there's so many capable scorers on this team. Keon is still getting his 6 or 7 shots with, 4 or 5 of those being threes. I think we've just seen everyone really look to kind of get their own game off. And I do have to credit Doug 100% for that, because Doug Christie is the exact kind of coach, I can hear him saying it, who wants you to kind of show your best stuff and not be afraid to go out there and kind of flex what you got. And I think Doug definitely empowers these guys. And it's a little bit different than with Mike Brown, because I think Mike Brown would tell these guys, hey, if you're open, let it fly. But I think if they didn't, they knew there would be a lot of ramifications for those actions, whether it just be, them being yelled at in film or whatever. I think with Doug, it's just all, hey, I just want you to be you and feel the best about you. And I don't want to put any fear, any doubt into your mind, because I know that little thing can throw off your entire game. So I just think the freedom that they've all been allowed under Doug has definitely, I think, surprisingly actually led to more even shot distribution, where you could maybe think that ultimate freedom might lead to absolute chaos. But in this case, for whatever reason, maybe it's just the right group of guys. It's really led to a pretty coordinated effort.
Yeah, I think you're seeing them work through that adjustment period that's expected when you rework your your roster as much as the Kings did at the deadline here. And the big thing for Keegan Murray probably throughout most of this year is they've gone away from as much of the dribble handoff stuff as we saw in the years prior. Obviously, that was like their primary offense, their everything, really. And you're starting to see them transition away from that. I think that you saw Keegan Murray be really comfortable in shooting that off the DHOs from Sabonis. If a guy goes under, pulling that quickly in his rookie year, probably worked on that a lot in the offseason just for them to come back and start to go away from that, specifically when it came to his role. And obviously lower in the pecking order when you bring in a guy like DeMar DeRozan in place of Harrison Barnes. Obviously, the improvement that you made there is going to demand more shots, understandably so. DeMar DeRozan being the elite scorer that he is and climbing the all-time scoring ladder as we see here. But I think the long-term outlook of this team is really dependent on Keegan Murray. It's still extremely tough to gauge what sort of ceiling we're talking about. And maybe that's the next question I can throw your guys' way, because as you look at this roster and try to see, okay, long-term, where do they continue to get better? It's Keegan Murray, it's Keon Ellis, it's Devin Carter. And then if you want to say that, hey, maybe Malik still has more to his game, maybe Domas still has more to his game. But I think the clear highlight on what long-term, how you can try to find some optimism is Keegan Murray taking another step in his game. And Chris, I'm curious your perspective, how much confidence you have in him being able to do that. Obviously you have to be enabled to within this offense, as you were talking about there. But do you see him potentially making those next steps? What does that look like as, he becomes extension eligible this offseason?
Yeah, I would say that I've been pretty critical of Keegan, also very supportive, but definitely more just I want to see more of the growth than what I feel like we've seen so far, especially because, like Frankie mentioned earlier, like we're talking about a 24-year-old guy who's in his third season. There's just a different level of expectation with where your game should be at, and frankly, how much time you have or are allotted to develop, because you're 3 years longer or you're 3 years further along than guys like Jaden Ivey who you could have taken. So I with all of that said, I think Keegan can definitely continue to progress towards being this potential third scoring option. I think I feel a lot more comfortable with him as like a fourth or fifth scoring option, but I think the defense is really the thing that I think he can take to a whole nother level. And I don't know if the thing that can set the roof off for Keegan, I will say, is if we can see the 3-point shooting with the defense more so like we've seen in this stretch that Frankie highlighted earlier, where he's shooting above 40%. We haven't seen Keegan Murray shoot above 40% from three since his rookie year. And I think that's fundamentally a problem with where I can see Keegan going. Like, the Keegan Murray needs to be a high percentage or an incredibly high volume 3-point shooter. And if he's great at defense, I think that's awesome. But I think what this team really desperately needs, especially with him being, frankly, the fourth pick from that draft, is they need somebody who on the offensive end, and I guess it can be on the defensive end as well, but they need a difference maker out of him. And he's looked in moments like that, but I think overall, I just haven't seen the go-to nature from Keegan that I think you would typically want to see from a guy who's in his spot. So, I think I definitely like the progression that he's going towards, but I just push back a little bit when we start to talk about, can Keegan Murray potentially be a lock for an all-star down the line? I just feel like maybe we should try and get him to a really, really solid starter for any team. If he can continue to be, 13 to 15 points per game and play the level of defense that we've seen him play these past couple of years, I think that's a really good place for Keegan's game.
Yeah, starting to see him develop into that. Frank, we want to get your thoughts here on the other side, but got to get to a break as we see the Sacramento Kings on a 4-game winning streak right now. But what can they do to help create a more optimistic long-term outlook for this roster here under Doug Christie, Zach LaVine, and some of these new faces? Going to hear what we have to say on the other side of how they can make that happen here on the first live Return of the Roar podcast here on Sacktown Sports 1140.
Domantas Sabonis plays here.
He finds Sabonis, put the frosting on the cake, put the cherry on the sundae. Sabonis with a two-hand flush makes it 114-106.
Sacktown Sports is your proud home of the Sacramento Kings. Kings. High voltage live boxing action returns to the venue on March 8th as Uppercut Promotions presents Thunder Showdown 2 with 8 big fights on the bill featuring top level veterans and the best in up and coming new names. Scheduled fighters include names like cruiserweights Blake McKernan and Sean Miller. It's a night of great boxing action you won't want to miss. It's Thunder Showdown 2 coming March 8th to the venue at the Thunder Valley Casino Resort. Fight cards subject to change. See Thunder Valley website for scheduled lineup. Sacramento's premier country music festival, Country in the Park, is coming back May 16th and 17th at Cal Expo with Bailey Zimmerman, Billy Currington, Cole Wetzel, Nate Smith, and more. You'll enjoy food trucks, rock walls, and a mechanical bull, line dancing, and more. Single-day GA tickets start at $52 at CITPFest.com. Country in the Park, May 16th and 17th with Save Mart and McKee Brothers Plumbing and Rooter Incorporated. Find out more at CITPFest.com.
Come check out Capital Casino, Sacramento's #1 poker room with the most variety of table games in the region in a safe and friendly environment. Plenty of well-lit parking available, conveniently located in downtown Sacramento. And remember, Capital Casino has the best food, the best service, and the best action. 411 North 16th Street in downtown Sacramento. For more information, log on to capital-casino.com, and please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hello, Sacramento. I'm Emran Pilati, owner of True Sports Cards and Collectible Store here in Rockland, California, and the host of the True Sports Cards Show that airs right here on Sacktown Sports 1140 every Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m., where we discuss the latest trends, hottest products, and deliver exclusive interviews with other industry leaders. And don't forget to visit our shop, True Sports Cards, at 6661 Stanford Ranch Road in Rockland, and see what we have for all your sports card and memorabilia needs.
Spring is here, and there's really nothing better than hitting the open road in a new Honda. Whether you're shopping new or pre-owned, Stockton Honda has the selection and savings, plus get top dollar for your trade. And while life's roads are often filled with bumps, buying from Stockton Honda couldn't be smoother. Wherever the road you travel might lead, Stockton Honda is happy to get you there. Come in today or go to StocktonHonda.com.
Anytime, anywhere, it's all here. StocktonHonda.com.
Hi, I'm Justin Gingery. One of the most common questions I receive is what makes us different from other law firms. At Gingery Hammer and Associates, we handle your case from beginning to end. Whether your case reaches a settlement, whether we need to file suit, or even take it all the way to trial, we will be with you along the entire way. And because we are committed to you and your case, we are as invested as you are in making sure you get the outcome you deserve. If you have an injury, just call Gingery.
At Valley Strong Credit Union, we know that local businesses are the backbone of the Central Valley, investing in our neighborhoods, boosting the economy, making the Valley stronger. But when it comes to their finances, where can they turn? A big bank that just sees another number? That's not good enough. Valley businesses deserve Valley support for payroll, credit, cash flow, and everything in between. Valley Business is Valley Strong. Learn how our cash management services can support your business at valleystrong.com.
There's a reason why more and more people are coming from all over to Sacramento Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Folsom, Elk Grove, Woodland, Roseville. And it's not just because they're centrally located next to Hagan Oaks Golf Course. It's because they make the car buying experience different than anywhere else. Yeah, of course they can get you a great price. That's the easy part. Where their general manager, Chuck Dean, and his team really make a difference is they don't believe you should have to sacrifice great customer service to get a great deal. Stomp on in today and see for yourself. That's Sacramento Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. It's the place where a handshake still means something.
Your home for Kings basketball for over 25 seasons.
Sacktown Sports.
First live edition of the Return of the Roar podcast with myself, Brenden Nunes, Chris Watkins, and we got Frankie Cartoscelli. Excuse me. Whoa. Joining us from home here. Frank, we were talking right before the break here about how the importance of Keegan Murray starting to spread his wings a little bit more and fit in with these new look Kings and what that could mean to their long-term outlook. Just what have you seen from him so far as he started to expand his game and what that means for the future of the Kings?
Yeah, I was kind of laughing for a minute before the break because, Chris, the way you were kind of laying it out there, a 13, 15 point per game player, that kind of reminds me of another player that used to spread his wings here in Sacramento.
A Falcon?
Yeah, I mean, again, no knock on HB, by the way. A pro's pro. But what Keegan Murray can bring on the defensive end, And like you mentioned, the ability to knock down the 3-point shot, that's a start. But I was looking at his field goal attempts per game, and it's dropped from 12 per game to 10 per game this year. And even thinking about last night's game, I thought he took more than 10 shots. He only took 10 shots last night. And yeah, efficiency is important and making sure it's a smart shot, not just kind of chucking. And that's important. But I do want to see Keegan Murray show more confidence and ability to create off the dribble. And I think his ball handling is definitely putting the ball on the floor is something he really needs to work on this offseason. And that's what I'm kind of looking at for him to take that next step. And we know he can shoot the ball when he's open. And we know that shooting obviously comes with some streaky stretches. And I think we've broken down when Kevin Huerter was here, his game a lot. Keegan Murray, those two players in particular, and any other sharpshooter that kind of is around the league right now. You'll look at them as it comes in bunches kind of situation for those guys. And Keegan Murray is no different. I think we looked at his month-by-month breakdown. I don't have it in front of me as splits, but I know that November, I think, is the worst month of his entire career. I think he's around like 26 or 27% in November. It really weighs down his averages. And after that, I think he's around 40% for his career in December and better in January even. So seeing him kind of turn that corner isn't really surprising over the past, couple months. And seeing him continue to kind of take that leap as far as self-creation. And we talked about it, I think, for a while now. I think that the three of us talked about it up there on Media Row last year when the Kings hadn't made the DeRozan move yet. I think we talked about for off-season moves, the Kings finding not a supermax player, because at the time they were trying to figure out Fox's future, but a player in the $25 to $30 million a year range that could be a 2-year project to kind of lead Keegan Murray into becoming that player and kind of taking the baton. We're now seeing DeMar DeRozan, who has one more year on his contract guaranteed, maybe one more year for Keegan Murray to kind of learn under him and kind of try to take a page out of his book. Maybe he won't be the scorer that DeMar DeRozan is, a Hall of Famer and probably a top 10 scorer when it's all said and done. But seeing him kind of show that confidence and be able to create off the dribble, be a better one-on-one scorer is really important for his development, and not just be a dribble handoff / spot up shooter. And I think that Keegan does have that in his bag. We saw it in college, and the NBA is not college, but like we talked about, it's his third year in the NBA, and he still has more growing to do, I think.
Yeah, starting to see him be a little bit more aggressive. Doug Christie talked about having an aim of 3-point attempts for each specific player, and the number being 10 for Keegan Murray. I mean, as funny as it is, I think it's somewhat as simple as him just looking at the rim a little bit more and trying to be aggressive rather than just feeling like a connecting piece of, I'm just touching this before it eventually gets back to DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine. But another guy that I think you can have some optimism about how he can continue to improve his game from here is Keon Ellis, about a month and a half into being 25 years old. As you mentioned earlier, Frank, the best 3-point shooter on the Kings, except for Doug McDermott, if you want to factor that in the limited minutes that he's played. Doug McDermott, 44% from three. Dougie McBuckets, 43.8% for Keon Ellis, though. He has 5 steals, a new career high against the Dallas Mavericks the other day. Seems like he's getting a handful of steals left and right. Was very big in that game against the Houston Rockets as well. Chris, how have you seen, Keon Ellis, who has had a somewhat of like a tumultuous role in this lineup of going up and down, sometimes hardly playing at all. There's other moments hardly playing at all and then still coming out to post game afterwards. Or there's a bunch of, minutes of one of the best lineups in the NBA this year is Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. So you see success when he's out there, but what have you thought about how he's continued to progress his game and if there's more steps for the 25-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, I hope there's more steps. I think the one thing that you've definitely seen from Keon, you use the word for Keegan and as a negative, and it definitely is a negative for Keegan, but I think for Keon, it's absolutely a positive. He's been a connector. He has been that guy that really connects and makes the floor of DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine makes sense. Or like you just listed, like Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan might be a bit of a complicated backcourt when you think about isolation and when you think about defense. But Keon Ellis, when you add in his spacing and when you add in his defensive ability to guard who those guys could potentially guard, I think it just makes him incredibly valuable for this team. And we've seen that throughout this year. I kind of joked that for a while, the reason why Keon stuck out so much was actually a negative. It's because he was like the only guy actually playing really high level defense, and it just stuck out so much. But you've just seen him really round out his game in total. You've seen him be the best 3-point shooter on the team. Like that's with Keegan Murray out there, with Keegan's struggles. Keegan might have the capabilities of being a better shooter, but right now it feels like this entire season when Keon's let that ball go, it's going in more times than not. And, we've seen him put the ball on the deck a little bit and attack the rim in that capacity. I think that's the part of his game that if he is going to truly take like another level, his ball handling, his shot creation off the dribble is probably going to be the place where that expands the most. But where he is right now is, I think, absolutely perfect. Like, he is that Danny Green. He is that 3-and-D guy that every single team in the NBA is looking for. And, somehow, some way, the Sacramento Kings have him. But when you think about his future, I don't have his contract immediately in front of me, but I do know that it's not one that locks him up here in Sacramento for a very long time. And so, he's somebody who I absolutely love to see him succeed with this team. But, if we're talking about him in the same vein as Keegan Murray and a guy like Devin Carter, like, the Kings have their draft rights for the next several years. To my understanding, I don't think they have Keon necessarily locked in to that capacity. I think it's this and next season.
Season, and then I believe that there's one more after that.
Okay.
I'll check and
make
sure.
But it's just not the same level of team control. Like, you can extend Keegan Murray can potentially sign a 4 or 5 year contract after this year. Devin Carter, you have him for the next 3 years, and then you have that contract extension. Keon Ellis, you don't have that level of team control with him. So it's just a little bit tough to consider him in the same vein as the Kings' future with those other two. But absolutely, if they can keep Keon, if you can keep him the next 5 years and really keep him until he's 30, I think you're just going to get one heck of a player that you can play in any lineup.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Kings have a team option on for next year, which they probably would pick
they
up.
do. $2.3 million. Just pulled it up. Right 1 year left of a team option, 2.3.
But there's a problem there. It's kind of like the Rashawn Holmes issue when he was here, because there's a certain amount of money like they can only pay him in the next contract. But I did see someone say that the Kings could decline next year's option and sign him to a new deal. I don't know what the parameters of that would be. I'm not a salary cap expert, but it sounds like that would be the smarter move, would be to, obviously you have to have a handshake agreement in place if you're going to decline an option. But I definitely think that letting a player like Keon Ellis go would be a problem for a team that has had a really hard time finding impact defenders since, dare I say, when Doug Christie was playing on the team and Ron Artest and down the line. They don't grow on trees, and the Kings definitely haven't had a fair shot at picking them. So I do think that Keon Ellis is someone that has proven he can play at this level, proven that he can play 25, 30 minutes, maybe more per game. I know there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not he should start, but he's kind of working his way into that late game rotation, which in my opinion is more important anyway. I think when Mike Brown was here too, we had a lot of debates about who should start, who should close. And, Mike said he cared more about who closed. And I do see the point of wanting to get out to a good start, but I think that Keon being on the floor late in those late game situations is maybe even more valuable from a defensive standpoint. So we'll see what his future looks like and how things unfold. But I do think the Kings maybe we might try to get creative with keeping him, because letting him go, and Devin Carter obviously has the potential to be an impact defender as well, but why not both?
Why not both? Why not both? I think that they definitely have the potential. Keon obviously showing it more so far. And I kind of agree with Chris's point. Whatever else comes is sort of the cherry on top here. I think that if Keon just can continue to prove to be this caliber of player for the next, quarter decade plus in the NBA, that there is a lot of value in being able to do that and what he provides right now. Again, this guy is shooting 43.8% from three, and he's towards the top of the league in deflections. He's doing this and playing 22.5 minutes a night. We mentioned his role changing a lot. I think that he's been very malleable and impactful in whatever position that you put him in. And that's not always the case for some of these guys that like to be able to catch a rhythm. But before we move to closing out with where we think they stand in the Western Conference and may end up to close this year, just want to kind of give you guys the opportunity, and I'll take myself as well, to see if there's another player in your mind from this 26 and under list on the Kings that you're keeping tabs on, like maybe there's another step they can take to their game to. And I'll go down the line again, 26 and under as of today. Markelle Fultz only played 5 games so far, even though I'm really interested. Malik Monk, 26. Mason Jones, 26. Keon Ellis, we mentioned, 25. Keegan Murray, 24. Isaac Jones, 24. Jake LaRavia, only 23 years old. And then you have Devin Carter sitting there, easily the youngest guy on the team at 22. Chris, as you hear that list, is there anybody that stands out to you as, maybe this guy can mean something more significant down the line and continue to improve?
Yeah, I mean, I think Malik is interesting. It's a conversation we've had in the past. Like, is there more to Malik's game than what we've seen? And I think we're definitely, instead of that being a hypothetical, like we're just going to flat out get that answer because of the opportunity he's going to have in front of him. Frankly, with De'Aaron Fox out of the picture, like Malik is, he might not be the starting point guard moving forward, but he's going to be thought of, I think, whatever the core is. I feel like, at least for the time being, Malik Monk is in whatever the central of this team's plans are. So I think we're definitely going to get an answer to it. I think he's probably the one that I would bet on personally, just because of his physical traits. He's obviously super springy. He's got handle. We see the playmaking capabilities. He can shoot the ball. I think we haven't really seen him be an efficient 3-point shooter, but that can really be some place where we see him take a really big leap. Malik's really been like a 35% 3-point shooter. If he can start to creep that thing up towards 38, towards 40% and truly be elite from back there, that could maybe be where we see him go above 20 points per game and really be something unique and special. And most importantly for the Kings organization, that could be a massive, massive discount that you get for a 20-point per game scorer, only paying him what they're paying him with this current contract. So Malik would definitely be the one that I circle. It really feels like there's maybe levels to this conversation that we can have because, I think it's been intriguing what Isaac Jones has done this year, but I don't necessarily want to go out there and say, I think Isaac Jones is working his way towards potentially being the starting 4 of the future or anything like that. Like, I think that all these guys that you mentioned definitely have some part of their game that I think that they can expand on. But in terms of the biggest, most impactful, it feels like to me, Malik is the guy.
Yeah, Frank, throwing the same question your way. 26 and under on the Kings currently. Just again, Fultz, Monk, Mason Jones, Ellis, Murray, Isaac Jones, LaRavia, and Devin Carter. Who do you have, a decent amount of optimism in their potential for, making an impact on this team down the line?
Yeah, and just kind of pointing out someone in the chat asking any chance LaRavia signs. I mean, resigns. I'm not sure. I think that the Kings are in the same problem. I think that's why the Grizzlies moved him too, is because they are limited in what they can offer him. So we'll see if the Kings can kind of navigate that, because it seems like they've been fond of him for a while. I think Brenden, you pointed out that you've heard that name mentioned for a while leading to that trade. So LaRavia is someone who I think
the draft even, I think.
Yeah, they had their eyes on him for a while, and we'll see if maybe that, is a mutual, kind of setting here. But looking to see what he can bring down the stretch will be interesting. Maybe the market kind of will play into the Kings' favor. Someone that is a bigger body that can shoot the ball and able to rebound the basketball at a high level, who's physical. The Kings really could use more guys like that. And I think Devin Carter really, especially at a time, and this kind of goes hand in hand with Malik Monk as well, a time where the Kings, they move off of De'Aaron Fox. They don't really have a quote unquote point guard they can kind of, hitch their wagon to and build around for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And is Malik that? He's proven he can be a distributor. The turnovers have been kind of a concern since that trade happened. They've been pretty high. I think last game he had 0, which he had a fun exchange on social media where a fan said if Malik Monk has 0 turnovers, to go buy a Monk jersey, and Malik tweeted at him saying, go get that jersey. So if he can continue to take care of the basketball, that'd be great to see, because I do think Malik, as a 16, 17, 18 point per game, 6, 7 assist type of player, really isn't out of the realm of possibilities, but got to get those turnover numbers down. And that can be a player who obviously plays very well in a pick and roll with Domantas Sabonis, who when he's healthy, they really connect a lot. So I'm looking at the point guard position. Devin Carter, who hasn't played much this year, had to deal with the shoulder injury, is shining in the G League. And a lot of people might look at G League numbers and scoff at them, but he's someone that definitely has potential to be a defensive player, and one that has the offensive skill set. The shot is a little funky, the mechanics, but we've seen a lot of other players have funky mechanics and it works out. So I'm looking at that point guard position. How do the Kings fill it? Is it Malik Monk? Is it Devin Carter? Do they look outside of the organization and try to bring somebody else in? I know that you're looking at Markelle Fultz. Is Markelle Fultz someone the Kings maybe want to bring back next year and see what he has for a full 82-game season? We'll see. I know that he was having some better days in Orlando before he had some injuries pop up as well, but that's a big position that needs to be filled down the line.
Yeah, Markelle Fultz, definitely a guy that interests me a little bit in that 26 and under list, barely making the cut in his 8th NBA season. And everybody talks about how he's a very high IQ player, getting acclimated to everything pretty quickly here. So I think as you start to see that process continue, maybe there will be more to his game. But guys, before we get out of here, again, everybody listening, appreciate you tuning in here to our first live Return of the Roar episode here. Going to be going from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every Tuesday. But real quick, guys, before we get out of here, I want to give you we'll give you like a 2 seating range of where you think the Kings will end up. I think it's fair to say, well, somewhere between 6th and 10th is probably where we're at. And what I mean by a 2 seed range, maybe you could say 6th or 7th or, 8th or 9th, sort of that sort of range. If you had to predict, currently sitting at, they're tied for 7th with 2 other teams, half a game behind 6th and a full game ahead of 10th. We'll start with you, Chris. Where do you think the Kings will end up?
I'm going to say, I'm going to say 8-9.
Really?
I feel like the Warriors are kind of on an upward trajectory. They feel like they're going to lock up the 6. I feel like the Clippers will probably finish in that 7. And I think the Kings will fall right under that 8-9.
Frank, what do you think?
I'm a little more optimistic as of late, and injuries are going to play a huge role down the stretch. The Kings need to get healthy. They need Domas back for sure to make this a possibility. But the Clippers, who they see this weekend on Sunday, I believe, Norm Powell has been a 24-point per game scorer for them. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury as well. So the Kings need to take advantage of those opportunities. And to me, I'm looking at 7-8. I think at 7-8, if the Kings continue to play this kind of basketball, can be right there. Schedule's hard. It's going to be a hard, road to the finish line. But I think this team's showing some promise here.
I think I'm siding with Frank here. I think I'm going 7-8.
Okay.
It seems hard to reach that sixth seed. I think, as you mentioned, Chris, Warriors seem to sort of have that one locked down post Jimmy Butler trade. I think that's where we're at. And I see where you're coming with the Clippers. Maybe it ends up being 8-9, but feel pretty good that none of us are talking about 10th or having to worry about 11th right now. So a little bit of a, optimistic tune to our first here live return of the Roar podcast. Of course, all the recordings are also available on all listening platforms. Going to be live here every Tuesday for the remainder of this Sacramento Kings season as they make a push for the playoffs. 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Return of the Roar here on Sacktown Sports. Thanks to everybody for listening.
Ain't no catfishing. So tell me what you see now. Coming down the lane off the rebound. It's 9:16 now.
You never know what you might hear when listening to a Sacramento Kings